Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Anita Sanchez with the Four Sacred Gifts podcast. I'm very excited for you to be here. This podcast is purpose is to amplify the voices of Indigenous people all over the world. And I make a commitment that we do go all over the world. So it's not centric to one area, because the wisdom that Indigenous people have with nature, of their cultures, and that is so really important to us at this time more than ever. But we can't know what that is unless we hear from each other. So today I'm just really very excited to have a guest who's a friend, a sister, and she's amazing. So let me introduce you to her. I'm going to read off her bio here. It's much longer, but I asked her for a short one. So Catherine is, and I'm going to ask her to say her names because I don't want to butcher them. I'm just going to be honest. In my heart, I told her I speak many languages, but what comes out of my mouth doesn't quite work. Anyway, Catherine will name afterwards her last name and the different clans she's from. So Catherine comes from Maori people of Aotearoa. Aotearoa. I'll get it down there. She has been an Indigenous human rights activist, advocate for decolonization, and environmental defender most of her adult life. Her credentials include a Master of Law, official roles in both of her tribes, treaty clans claims negotiations with the New Zealand government, 2 UN Human Rights Indigenous Fellowships representing the Pacific, and as a delegate representing her Maori people at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. A former educator and now proud grandmother, her current focus is building climate resilience and food sovereignty in her community through an organization to which she belongs, Climate Action Tai Tokoro. And she'll have to correct how I said that. She also participates, and how we know each other initially is from the Wombs of Peace, which is is an elder council that we belong to of women, and other international workshop networks that she belongs to share perspectives on Indigenous spiritual knowledge and practices for healing people and the planet. And let me just say, that's her bio, and I know there's even more, and that's enough in itself, more than enough. But I just want to say she is a dear friend of mine. So there's bias. I just want you to know up front. And I'm just delighted that she's here because it's 20 hours difference from I'm coming to you from Colorado. And of course, she's coming to you from New Zealand. So I'm especially thankful to my friend, my guest, to wake up early and to be here with us. So with that, Catherine, if we could start with you saying your full name and the name of your nation, because we really want to honor them.
Kia ora. Thank you, Anita. Yes, my name is Catherine Murupaenga-Ikenn, and I'm coming from the Māori peoples of Ngāti Kuri and Te Raroa here in Aotearoa, also known as New Zealand, down under, or according to other maps like the United Nations world map, we're actually on the top of the map. So reality is different depending on your perspective. Which is maybe is one of the things we can talk about is what is reality? What's the nature of it?
What is reality? And let's definitely not lose that question, because I think that would be really of interest to people, because we are talking to people at different places. And I think you're one of the only ones who's really brought up how it is so different, the perspective and how you look at who is on Earth and where are they and all that. But first, I'd like you just to say a little bit about, your early life. So now just to let people get to know you, where you grew up, a sense of all of that. So they have a thing. And I want to tell you that part of all of you listening and watching, part of my goal is that you not only like this person, you fall in love with her and you hear her wisdom, that there's something there that you can integrate in your life, or to know that, hey, we need this. Indigenous perspectives are so critical. So with that, just tell us a little bit about your life, key points that you want. I know it's kind of hard.
Kia ora, Anita, and you just yellow or red card me when we need to move on to the next segment. or whatever.
Okay.
And yes, can I just say, yeah, I also love being in conversations like this, because I too am a seeker of knowledge and wisdom. That's true for all of us. Doesn't matter where in life we are. I reckon there's always something to be learned, especially now when the world is so weird and messy, and it's just hard to grasp, you know, what is true and what isn't, and sift through all of that. So yeah, a lot of healing to be done as well everywhere. Myself, yeah, well, my family actually, my dad, he brought us up in the city in South Auckland here. So we grew up away from our traditional territory. My parents, they split up when I was just a young girl. And it was interesting here at that time, this was like in the 70s, early 70s, for the father to get the children, when the, you know, usually you'd think the girls, because there's just my sister and I, my older sister, usually you'd think the justice system or would have the girls go with the mother,
Yeah.
but they chose yeah, my father to take care of us. And I think that was probably because of our cultural background. So here's a time where culture played a big part, right? My mother was not Māori. She immigrated from Australia. Caucasian, actually. That's my Scottish side, the Murray clan, for any of those who might be from the Murray clan. We could be related. And she also had some subcontinent of India blood on her grandmother's line. So that's kind of my genealogical links. And but my father would take us back home as often as he could every holidays. So we'd have a very close, you know, link back to the village and village life up in Ahipara in the north, far north of the North Island. That was my primary school days, but we moved home back to Ahipara permanently when I started intermediate, which is like middle school for other places, and then high school up there. And then I went on to university, did a law degree, law and philosophy, actually. So I would really encourage, if anyone could do philosophy, do it, because it just gives you this whole like roundedness of perspective on life. The one thing I would say, though, which is a bit of a bugbear, looking back as an adult Māori woman, is they didn't do any Māori philosophy. No Māori philosophy. All the other kind of philosophies, but not from our own country, which was quite sad, I thought. And then I went to Wellington to work with the government. Don't hold that against me, but for the Ministry of Māori Development after I got my degree, my first degree, as a policy analyst. And I worked on things like treaty claims of the Māori peoples here, Māori consultation processes on different government policies, and also we have here in New Zealand, it's a commission of inquiry into the relationship between Māori and the Crown and grievances that Māori have for breaches of the Treaty of Waitangi, is its English name here. But it's actually known properly as Te Treaty o Waitangi, which is the Māori name for a treaty between Māori and the Crown in 1840, which was signed and it guaranteed our sovereignty. The problem with that is the version, the only version that's an actual legitimate treaty that exists, is in the Māori language, and that guaranteed the Māori chiefs our sovereignty, except there's this English text that's floating around in the country. It's not even a treaty per se, because the Māori chiefs only discussed and predominantly signed the Māori version, so that's the one that should stand. But there's this English one that's floating around saying that Māori ceded their sovereignty. So, yeah, we've been battling that. Yeah, we've been battling that propaganda ever since 1840 and still doing that today. So there's this tribunal that assesses and inquires into grievances that Māori tribes have, peoples have, about the broken promises under that treaty. And so that was part of my job as a policy analyst too, to assist with addressing those claims. And that was in the 90s, mid 90s. And then I got shoulder tapped to move into a law firm in a Māori unit in the firm. And I thought, this is a great move, because this law firm in Wellington had created this Māori unit within the law firm, because they wanted to address some of the inequities that Māori were having in retaining really quality legal representation with our different issues. However, when I got into the law firm, and it wasn't even a year, and we had a major upset with the partners of the firm, which was our little team had been building up a relationship with a client, a Māori client, a tribe that was entering into their negotiations with the government about settling some grievances they had. And they chose us over another firm, and we were delighted, of course, about that. And then the partners dropped on us that they had decided to take the Crown on and represent the Crown in the same matter, in the same issue. And we were just shattered. We were shattered. We were like, how could you do that? And this was not the first time that the team leader in our legal firm had this happen, a similar kind of betrayal from the partners.
No conflict of interest, huh?
Yeah, and so she walked away from it, and of course none of us wanted to stay. We were only a small group. There's only like 7 of us in our team. None of us had the heart to want to stay, and over progressively we were all kind of pushed out of the firm in different ways. One of the ways that happened was they just made it very not hostile for us to remain in the firm. Like, they'd place us in different departments in the firm that we really didn't want to be in. Like, they put me in tax. I didn't like tax. Tax law. And so
exactly.
but I got a lifeline soon after that all went down, which was my Māori peoples up home, Te Raroa. They were beginning their they weren't beginning, that it was like there had been a previous stage where they were talking with the government about our treaty claims, right? And they refreshed and entered into new conversations with the government about that. They needed a project manager for the negotiations with the Crown, and they asked if I would come and be the project manager for that. And I went, yeah,
they picked the right person.
Yeah, so another theme in our lives, I reckon, is just these chapters in our lives, and the serendipity I've noticed anyway that occurs, like doors opening and things just naturally happening, and you just feel like somehow your life is directed in different ways. And
we're not in control.
Yeah,
it's good to have a plan, but don't expect it to happen that way.
Oh, totally. And so I accepted that role, and I went home, and that was in the year 2000. That was in like the turn of the millennium. I don't know if the turn of the millennium has anything to do with major shifts, but it did. And I remained working for my iwi, my tribe of Te Raroa, right up until 2015. So and at the same time, it was an interesting situation, because for my tribal council of Te Raroa, I went home as a project manager, but very quickly I got snapped up and asked to represent my marae, which is like my our marae, our like hubs for our community. It's our ancestral meeting spaces. And so our marae asked if I would be their delegate to the tribal council for Te Raroa. So in some quirky way, I was working for my tribe, but also my own boss as a governor. It was a weird situation.
Yeah.
On the tribal council at the same time. And I also, after a period of time, it was 2008, I believe, my other tribe, Ngāti Kuri, was also building up its capacity to negotiate with the Crown, and they asked if I would step up and run in the election to be an actual negotiator for our tribe, which I did. And in 2008, I was elected as a negotiator. Now, this presented a quirky kind of situation where I was working with both my iwi, and although we're in the same geographical territory and we have relationships that are, overlap genealogically, and that we still had to have a degree of separateness in our negotiations with the government, because there were some overlaps that we had to determine how we were going to talk through those sorts of issues between us as two Māori peoples as well. I had to stop being the project manager for Te Raroa at some stage and just dedicate wholly to Ngāti Kuri as an elected.
That's good.
Negotiator.
I was going to say you'd have a lot of gray hair if you kept doing that, I would think.
You just get schizophrenic in some ways, don't you?
That would be so good.
And the other thing I said in between all of that, in 2005, one day I was sitting at my desk, and an email comes across my computer, and it says, apply for this United Nations Indigenous Human Rights Fellowship. And I was like, wow, that looks amazing. Boop. And I sent it on to my networks thinking somebody out there is going to be interested in that. And very quickly I got all these pingbacks, and it was like, what? Why aren't you applying for this? And I was like, oh, at the time, I had a baby, and I didn't feel like I could leave him for 5 months. Back then, that's how long they went for, and based in Geneva, Switzerland. And so, I didn't consider it until people started saying, look, we'll just support you. We'll take care of your son. Kahutotara is my baby's name, Kahutotara. And everything will be taken care of. You won't have to worry. It's too big an opportunity. You must go. And so I did. I applied, and I was awarded the fellowship on behalf of the Pacific, and that was amazing. And then I came back and I brought all the human rights sort of perspectives back to my iwi, and wove as best I could that into all the work that I was doing, advocating for my people's treaty rights and human rights and such. So that's, I'm not sure if that's a bit of insight.
No, that sounds great. I know there's so much when I ask that question, but so I have a question that goes along with this is, so when we saw each other, we see each other on Zoom, but when we saw each other in person, it was a year and a half or so ago in the summer, and we were in South Dakota at a gathering of a lot of conservationists, scientists, and then quite a large delegation of Indigenous people. And one of the things that I'm listening to this, and it's like how this all works into, or maybe there's something in addition. You brought not only your expertise that comes from lawyering, from knowing your fellowships and all that, what always present was the spiritual part. And so I'd like to hear about that, because I think that's many people don't really know what that is. And I found it quite powerful in being able to not only on the very earthly things that we were doing, but also lifted people up that, not of your traditions, but it was really clearly powerful. So maybe you could say something to us about spirituality and what that.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And that was the Wilderness Congress, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think it was their 12th. Their 12th, they have them every 4 years, and it was the first one I'd ever been to. It was amazing. Yeah, so I brought with me to that Congress a proposition, and I just called it metaphysical activism, because I know we do, as activists, as defenders for the environment and social justice and human rights, we do a lot of conventional, like, rallies and mobilizing people, and I don't like the word protest because it's pushing against something, and that whole thing about what you resist persists sort of thing. So
Yeah,
I like to rather think we should stand affirmatively for something.
Yeah, standing for.
Yeah, standing for something. So the idea was, and it still is, because I still advocate for it today, is that Indigenous peoples have all these it's knowledge systems about from a spiritual basis, about our cosmological origins, where we've come from, which is from a energetic place. For example, for Māori people, we believe we come from this creator called Io. Io has many names. Io Matua Kore, Io the parentless one, for example. And Io the all-seeing, Io the all-knowing, Io the eternal. He has all, not even he, Io, just Io has all of these different names. And prior to Io, Io emerged out of this realm, which we call Te Kore Kore. And kore in our language means nothing, but there's this pattern in the Māori language that often you see it where you put a word next to itself repeated. It gives not just a doubling of the original idea, but it has like a transcendent meaning of the original idea. It's fascinating to me. Now,
It is. I didn't know that. Well, that's
yeah. It is full transparency. I am not a fluent speaker because of, I'll just say, generally speaking, colonization, rah, rah, rah. I was brought up with English as my first language. And so I've had to just stitch together Māori language to the best of my ability. And a lot of that I've done through singing on the marae and just sitting and listening, and what we call whakatauki, proverbs, and just picking up language wherever we can. But so this realm, te kore kore, so kore means nothing. So when you put nothing beside itself and get a transcendent idea, and I love asking people, what do they think that might be? So I don't know, Anita, if you'd like to have a guess at what a transcendent idea of nothing might be.
I think that's great. I think that's something I trust. Is all I'm going to say for me, because it's hard to wrap my head, if I only use my head, around everything that's going on, because it's totally irrational. However, if you transcend, and as many Indigenous people believe, that we're related to everything, and that's not just to, clearly the animals, the elements, and all that, but it's bigger. It's the cosmos. It's everything. Yeah. And so when you're related to everything, you don't set that aside. Unfortunately, people have been using a lot of guns. It would be like using a machine gun on yourself. Why would you do that? So that transcendent place would be one where there's not the separation, but there's that, it lifts it all up. Did I get anywhere close?
No, you're definitely in the ballpark. Te kore kore for us is a dimension or a realm of pure potential. And so, if anyone can think, there's a connection, a transcendent idea of nothing, pure potential. Yeah, okay, I get it. And that's where Io came from. And from Io, of course, there are the next sort of stage of creation we call te pō. Pō means the night, but there were these different stages of the night, like the deep night, the dark night, the long night, the night streaked with light. the groping night, the night that preceded day, and then Te Ao Marama, the world of light emerges. And what I love about that sequencing of creation that followed Te Kore Kore and Eo's becoming, and the consciousness was growing and spreading out and seeking, and through these creative stages of Te Po, I liken to the womb of the universe, which is like the womb of the, inside of us, the women, that dark place, which is actually full of like, the potential for life. And we see, what we also see, another theme in Māori understanding is the fractal nature of things, eh? And for people who may not quite know what I'm talking about, it's like micros and macros reflecting each other in the universe. The sequencing of Te Po is like the womb, and the womb, it can also be likened to like maybe soil in, on the land, where a seed goes into the dark dirt, the soil, and then life springs from that. And just generally the universe, and other fractals of like the human being. We have, cells in our body, and they have all sorts of attributes, just like communities out there, and the communities of people have, like they procreate, a little cell procreates, they cluster together in communities, and they create their own sort of civilizations and worlds. They excrete waste and they take in energy, so they have this metabolizing, just like the human body does, just like communities of people do. So there, and also the universe is sort of very like reflects our constitution as well. There are whole galaxies that have communities of stars and planets, and they're working around together, and synchronicity and all this sort of stuff. And so, life is like that. So this was, we were talking about spirituality. So this is like our metaphysics. This is our metaphysics.
Yeah.
Of how Māori think, and many Indigenous peoples have their own kind of narratives. I won't call them myths. I don't like to use that word, myths, for us.
They're living wisdom. They are. I don't like ancient either. I don't know if we've ever talked about it. Like ancient wisdom, it's living ancient wisdom. You can leave ancient in there, but it's alive. We're not gone.
Thank you. If I may, I'm going to maybe use that too. It's ancient, but it's living. It's definitely. So the whole point of that is to say that we believe, we as Māori peoples, we have our origins from the divine, not in the Christian sense, but in the sense of we have these creative powers within us. We have the ability to create. Create what? Create the reality all around us, create our lives, our experiences. Not to say I'm still a student, very much a baby student in all of this. We're in process, but I have faith and belief. We call whakapono, belief in something. That is like the infrastructure of the universe. That is actually the scaffolding of reality. Is that we as humans are able to interact, somehow engage with that scaffolding and co-create reality as we go along. And the beautiful thing is, and this is the metaphysical activism proposition I brought to Wild 12, was if Indigenous peoples believe this, well, that's all well and good, but we seem not to really be listened to by mainstream, humanity and civilization. They keep sort of like pushing our ideas and our knowledge systems and our wisdom off to the side and say, oh, that's cute. Oh, that's kind of interesting. It's great for tourism, cultural tourism. You have a cultural experience with Indigenous peoples. But we don't really believe it. We don't really put any stock in it. However, now in the present, we have in the Western world science, which is, and I say we don't need validating of what we know.
No, but they finally come to us first scientists. That's our answer. We're our scientists. And great observers, great the whole thing. So yeah.
That's all science really is. Hey, you're in the environment, you observe and you see patterns around you. And yeah, that's what we've been doing for hundreds, thousands, however long years. So science comes along, and particularly quantum science. And now here's another quirky thing. In my Indigenous fellowship, when I went to Geneva, for some reason unbeknown to me, I still don't know today, no one can tell me, on our schedule of activities, we did a field trip to CERN. It's that facility of nuclear science that borders Switzerland and France, where they had that big Hadron Collider.
Yeah, I know what you're
For people
talking
who
about.
may not be familiar, and it's a facility where what they've been doing is they fire different particles of matter, tiny particles of matter, around this ring in different directions, so that they boom meet each other and bang. And what they were trying to do, and what they're still trying to do, I imagine, is understand the nature of like how the universe was created, the Big Bang and all that sort of stuff. And so we went there, and the Hadron Collider was still being made, constructed. We went down, and we talked with the scientists. They showed us around. We were, ooh, ah. Then we had a conversation with the scientists about their work and what they do there. And I asked them a question. It's so funny. I asked them a question because I was a Trekkie. I was a big fan of Star Trek. I love those. And by the way,
I think there are a lot of Trekkies listening, probably.
I keep segueing, but life is like that. You sort of segue and you come back. What was I going to say?
A question that you asked them, the science.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. From the Star Trek, I was like, okay. So you've told us all about what you're doing here, and can you tell me about whether teleportation is actually a thing? You know, that beam me up, Scotty. And I'll always remember the look on the scientist's face. He just had a big smile and kind of went, yeah, nah, no comment. And I took that to mean, yes, there is such a thing as teleportation, because our we call them tohunga. You might call them shamans. They're expert in the esoteric, metaphysical, or today you can have tohunga and all sorts of things. It might be the weaving arts. It might be a particular branch of education. It doesn't matter what it is. Gardeners. But the tohunga back in the day, we were told they could actually like do things like astral travel. They could like had portals that they could go and boop, pop in a wholly different part of the land. They could move interdimensionally and communicate with different beings and different levels of dimension. They could do all this sort of stuff. So to me, teleportation is not a thing conceptually. And interestingly, anyone can go on the internet and search for themselves. There have already been teleportation experiments done at CERN. They admit that now. It's common knowledge. So interesting. What used to be like conspiracy and spoiler alert kind of thinking by people decades ago or times past, now we're talking about it as normal. So I'd like people to just hold a space for that. Yeah, what was once like woo woo is now becoming safe to discuss. And in fact, there are many things that are happening now in this age, and we have moved into a new age. For any who do sort of follow the Western astrology knowledge systems, we've come out of a very patriarchal age of Pisces, and we're now in the very matrilineal energy of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius. And there are many things about the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of our species of a human organism. We're evolving, and there's some big stuff coming our way, shifts in consciousness and I would say spirit. But yeah, so all of that being said, it was like metaphysical activism. Indigenous peoples have wisdom. Science now is caught up. Speaking of different, yeah. Kia ora, thank you.
I mean, some of them are definitely.
Yeah, but there are some concepts in faith-based, knowledge systems. Now, I'm not religious, but I really love, those who are religious, who are helping also to bring peace and security and, all that into the world, understanding and love and compassion. There are spiritualists. There are maybe atheists, but maybe they can see from the science knowledge systems this shared understanding now of the nature of reality. It's starting to different terminology, but there seems to be something in common that they all talk about, which is consciousness and how the underlying energy, the fabric of life, the scaffolding, like I said before, is pure energy. And in that, somewhere, the role of humans to engage with it is starting to become more clearly understood. That should blow people's minds. And so I the proposition was, can we create a space, a forum, a platform, something where all those different knowledge systems and wisdom holders can come together and kind of just under one tent talk about what is the nature of reality? What's your perspective on it? What's our perspective on it? What's common? What's different? And can we talk about how humans can really engage with that? Because look, the chaos in the world is complex more than ever. And I still see the same conventional ways of groups and people. God, Atua, bless them, we call our supernatural ancestors, we call Atua. They're not gods like the Christian sense, whatever, but they're our supernatural ancestors. But we're all still doing these, writing submissions to select committees on bills and legislation, or protesting out on the streets, or using the media and trying to get a platform to advocate for something that we're concerned about and we don't like, or podcasting and all that. This is all really great, and let's keep doing it, but it hasn't actually, there's something missing that's not shifting. I'm not sure if I believe in evil per se, but there are forces in this world that are going against nature and the well-being of people on the planet, and they've still got their hooks in, and we need to find ways to move that, and I'm just looking for different ways to do that. And I think the metaphysical activism, we might have to amplify that, because there is real solid evidence now that kind of work will help greatly.
Making that choice. And so from my Indigenous people, Aztec and Toltec, we have the cosmology and all, down earthly, the whole thing is connected. And what you say is there's this darkness, not that I think darkness is bad, but there's this overwhelming force, let's just say. But what we've been told over many, many hundreds and thousands of years is there are periods in the evolution of life where the darkness overwhelms, but the darkness can never kill the light. And I think it's talking about that energy that you're talking about, that potential. And as long as we can converse about that, hold that, whatever way you need to hold that. I was brought up both earth-based and Christian, so I do my thing with it. But I know that holding on to that possibility allows you to create a different reality. And then all of a sudden, other people, and I see these scientists. So I love that. And I didn't know I was going to say this, but I'm working now with, and I want to tell them about you. I'm working with this group of scientists from around the world, and we just come together in conversation. And there's 4 or 5 of us Indigenous, and then 2 or 3 times that I'm a scientist, and we talk. And like how this will shift. But I think just in the conversation, something gets reinforced that's the unseen, that is expanding. So when you talk about all these differences, and these scientists are talking about it too. So now they're talking. I just smile because they're like, "Oh, we're so excited. We're able to show with instruments that the trees talk to each other." And and it's like, yeah, well, we've been doing that a long time. That's not, hey, when you find fire, you get excited for people. You don't say, oh, we already done that. No, go for it, because it's really important, because people aren't listening to the ocean, to the trees, to the birds, to the, it's crazy making. So I love that thought of metaphysical. And I've never, I heard it a little bit from you back then, but you put in some other things with it. And I think you're talking about something even bigger than what I hear spiritual activism. And
Yeah.
spiritual activism,
Yeah.
you're this other level. And also with the realization that negative force against negative force will not do it. So
Mm.
people hating them back is not going to do it. And you see examples of that, right? And some of your songs, and as I understand, not just from you, but from some other Maori people, is a part of what is instilling that's still possible, that you're more than, you know? It's just really wonderful.
Well, it's easy for us to believe because, like, even I'm thinking of like Neil deGrasse Tyson and others. They talk a lot about people come from the heart of stars, literally the component parts that make us up, the elements of hydrogen and whatever. It
Yeah.
comes from the heart of stars. So if you can't like get in a heart and mind, place where you believe you're bigger than just this little, human person in this lifetime living this life experience. If you can't believe you're something bigger than that, you come from something bigger than that, in a spiritual way, that's all good. You can just extrapolate from modern day science now and know that I actually am literally from the universe.
Yes.
I have this like track that takes me right back. So yeah, there's so many ways to like
Yeah. Oh,
frame
it's
it.
wonderful.
So
It's
many ways
wonderful.
to
And
frame it.
when you say this, I mean, I think that's part of, we're talking about, I was talking with some folks about culture change. And that means not to get rid of all cultures, but how does, when a mainstream belief like we are separate, and it's not just we have all this power, but it's rather we have power over. And that's very different than the power you're talking about, that human beings, human supremacy, that's gotten us in big trouble because we're not.
Yeah.
So you're talking about this other level, which is about all connected, and everything's a part of you. So why would you hurt? I mean,
Yeah.
we're all supporting each other. So this chaos that's happening really is that. And something's got to open up. Other people are very fatalistic about it, every doom and gloom. Um, that may happen in terms of what the people see, but I also experience from that knowing of oneness, knowing that we're part of everything, that something else is. It doesn't mean we don't get into action. So that's what I like about your
Yeah.
metaphysical physical
Killed.
action,
Yeah.
because that's
Oh,
the
it's
thing,
totally
spiritual
practical.
act. It's not about sitting back and no, we're about that. But the way we do it and the embracing that we do, um, and that's in part what I love about this podcast, because it's bringing people like you who are sharing these things, and it's an invitation to participate, to think
Yes.
of what's possible and be part of that, so that you may not get overwhelmed as much, let's say, by the other forces, at least not taken out. And that's where I always come back to, is that from very early on, my girl was, nope, it cannot, it can never kill that light. And I thought, "God, there's just that little bit of me, and it can never kill it. Then I have lots of power to move, you know." That's great.
Yes.
Anyway,
And for full transparency, I have, I some days I really struggle with
yeah.
what I'm feeling in the world and feeling inside of me about what's happening, in my life in the world. And that's okay.
Mhm.
In
Because we're human, we're spirit in human form. So that, and I'm glad you said it, because I'm
Yeah.
not against gurus, but I get nervous when people believe they know it all. We're
Oh,
explorers. We're still scientists. And so I go outside periodically and I wail. I'm in the mountains, so nobody can hear me, but I just go out and wail. And
Yeah.
then, okay, I'm not
Awesome.
going to stay there, but I have to get it out so then I can move again. And
Yeah.
that's part of being human. So
Yeah, it
thank you
is.
for your transparency. I think um, in my perspective, it makes it more credible because it's not always easy. Nobody promised that.
And no, exactly. It's humbling, really, also to think. I mean, we have our atua, our supernatural ancestors, like, you know, after Io and the stages of Te Po and the forming of, you know, more dimensions and form in the universe. There emerged Ranginui and Papatuanuku. Ranginui, the Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother, according to our creation stories. And then they had children, and these children, these atua, who had dominion over different, you know, areas of life, they argued with each other and they went through their own trials and tribulations. In fact, one of the stories now that is coming to mind, because I'm thinking about, you know, how we have all got this grief we're having to deal with, you know, in today's world. One of the stories is about our atua Tane Mahuta, and he went on to become the atua of the, like, humankind, but forests and all the life within the forest, the birds and the lizards and the trees and so on. But he was the one that ascended the different realms, the 12 levels of reality. So here's another thing. Māori, and there might be some, you know, variations around these stories. In fact, there absolutely are between different Māori nations. But generally speaking, 12 layers of reality is what we've been told exists. And Tāne Mahuta, he ascended those realms to retrieve some knowledge from Io and bring it back down to humanity, so that humanity could thrive. So it was knowledge about the esoteric, but also about every day-to-day life, you know, cultivation and fishing and education about, you know, different knowledges that we need to be thriving in the world. He brought that back because he loved humanity. However, he had a bit of a flaw. Um, the story goes that he wanted to create, you know, the first human and have, you know, a companion and then create humanity. So he did that by finding a particular place on Papatuanuku where the earth was so fertile and rich, and he formed, you know, a shape there out of the clay, and he breathed life into it. And the first human was actually a woman. So yay for, but and he you know, procreated with her. They had another daughter, and over time there were more humans were created. His daughter went off and found a husband, and they had children and so on. And one day the daughter's name was Hinetitama, the Dawn Maiden is
Nice.
loosely the name for Hinetitama. And one day Hinetitama, she asked her husband, like, because if Hinetitama, you know, Tāne Mahuta was very busy. He was often off and he'd gone and doing his, you know, atua supernatural power things. And so she asked her husband, I don't really know my dad. Do you know much about my dad? Do you know who my dad is? And her husband was like, kind of didn't really respond. He kind of hesitated and was quiet. And Hinetitama instinctively felt, uh-oh, something's wrong with this picture. It turned out her husband was her father, Tāne Mahuta.
Yes.
And she fell into this deep, dark, you know, place of shame, and you can imagine, which I find, all of that interesting, because at one level, it's like creative forces at that level, at the energetic level, to me, it feels like you wouldn't really have this gendering and this the taboos around how creation happens, because you're just starting out, and the energy is just energy. If I'm clumsily sort of saying this, but somehow she felt that, yeah, she did. She sensed, oh no, there's been some transgression has happened. It wasn't my fault. I look at you and think you should have known, but now I'm burdened with this transgression. I'm not going to use the word sin. I don't think that is
No, I don't.
that, you know, it's really hard to take Indigenous concepts and translate them into, you know, the English Western sort of language. It's just impossible to do a lot of the time. Anyway, she decided that she would reinvent herself. She had to deal with the grief of what had occurred, what she'd been entangled in without her knowledge. And she turned herself into this new persona, Hine Nui Te Pō. And if you remember Te Pō, you know, those dark creation stages. Right. So there's a fractal there. She turned herself into this new identity of Hine Nui Te Pō. Hine is our word for female woman, of Hine Nui Te Pō, of the dark, deep night. And she took on this responsibility. She said to Tāne Mahuta, look, mate, I'm taken off. I'm going to the underworld, and I am going to now have this responsibility for when our children pass over and their spirits, you know, return to the underworld. I'm going to be there to make sure that they have a safe passage through to their new home in the underworld. That's going to be my job from now on. And her ability to love, you know, all of humanity so much through that journey, she threw herself into that role and responsibility, and just, yeah, made that her guardianship for that process. That kind of helped her have a kaupapa. We call it a kaupapa, a role, a purpose. Yeah. And here's another thing, right? That Māori really believe, to have a life purpose is so important, especially in times when, you know, like now, where things are so hectic, and it's like this, what do I hold on to anchor me and give me meaning when everything is turmoil around me and so much is just upside down? I need something to just, you know, hold on to and keep me stable. A life purpose can do that. And so that's what she became. Now, why did that come up for me? Oh, just maybe the state of the world, and of being transparent about, yeah, some days I find it like very difficult to, yeah, just be in the world, just be here. Right. And a life purpose helps me actually to do that. And my purpose, what would that be? What my kaupapa be? It's just being in service in any way I can to help others and add value to other people's lives. Is, you know, basically it. And this is part of it. Things like this is part of it. Yeah. So
you make it sound small, but it's actually quite big to be of service. Oh. For me, it's been since I was 3. I remember this dream, and I still have it, and I share it with people. I am here to connect hearts all over the world. That's what I'm supposed to do. Now, how that plays out is I didn't know that would mean I get a doctorate and work all over the world. But I'm just following whatever. And now, always through that was talking to people like you, like Indigenous people, older, younger, different parts of the world, to understand that given there is chaos, that humanity can exist because it's part of this greater that you're talking about. And when we forget that, that's the part that it doesn't help to just go to your mind, because you're never going to find the rationality of why someone would be so hurtful to somebody else. I'm using mild words, hurtful, but yeah, so this is very helpful. The other thing I'm going to extrapolate from, you can tell me I'm wrong, is when you're sharing all this, I'm hearing like in that plane, we may not have separated male, female, and yet there are these names that maybe it's some way for us to grasp. But there is a role, whether you want to call it female, there is a role for girl, woman, and it is time. So it means not being quiet and stepping up and doing this metaphysical activism, spiritual activism. Um, and there are lots of prophecies too that say it is time. It's time to lead.
Yes.
And so this stepping aside and back is not enough, because we can't continue this. I don't know even what to call it. The best I can say is just human superiority, human supremacy, that I have the right to have power over whatever, including to destroy yourself. That's what it seems like. I know. Isn't
There's a
it
lot of
crazy?
that.
Yeah.
Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we've got one of the worst statistics in the OECD nations for mental illness, anxiety, depression, and suicide sort of basket of
It's what's happening all over the world and stuff. But so I'm going to not switch, because it's still is all connected. But before we close in the next few minutes, I like to hear from you. What is your dream, your vision, your dream, whatever you want to call it? Where it is that's pulling. I know that pain pushes, but vision pulls, the dream, and that's really important. So I'm curious if you have dream or dreams, and if you could share it with us, because then we can send energy to that as well as listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. Dream. Well, it's pretty simple, really, just for people to live, happy, fulfilled lives, really, with dignity. And I'm coming from the human rights background. Everyone has the right to live a life of dignity, and to be sovereign. And to be sovereign means we feel we have the sense of agency. We can make choices, and we can live a life that we choose. Choice is so important, to feel that we're not slaves to the world. We are free beings is what I wish for everyone on this planet, and to have a life that you can look around and you can feel gratitude, love and gratitude. Our word for love, by the way, aroha with a ra, similar to the Hawaiians, aloha.
Yes.
I find it's a great word because in our language, the harmonics, the resonance of sound has power.
Yes.
And so the sound it correlates with like knowledge and wisdom and enlightenment, like in ra, that's our word for the sun, and light carries knowledge and wisdom, right? Aroha is bookended with a at the start and the end, so love, compassion, understanding, all those concepts in aroha is founded in actual wisdom. It has to be, because that's what the sound of the word tells us. And the word ha means breath. So in aroha, it's not just, the idea isn't just breathe, and feel your breath and settle the body so you can feel, love for yourself and everything emanating out. But you also understand conceptually that your breath connects you with, the air around you, and that air has been cycling and recycling around the world for billions of years. It connects you back with every person, every plant, every dinosaur, you name it. So you're connected in that way through breath. And aro, the word aro and aroha, aro, it refers to the word aro, which means to focus, pay attention. So when you sort of put all these things together, that's what the word aroha actually means, focusing on this idea that we're all connected. And that's one way you can really feel compassion and love for everyone. And a word that sounds like aroha which is really important too, is mai oha. There's that oha again, which means gratitude. So, you know, I mean, if we can live lives where we feel, you know, aroha and mai oha all the time, and we feel free, wow, that's a really beautiful dream for all of us to be
I
able to
think
reach
people
that place.
watching and listening will send light to that. And I'm really grateful that you're here and sharing and doing what you're doing in the world. And I want to let people know that you can find Catherine in LinkedIn, but we'll have it on the website, her full name, so that you know how to find her. And because to spell it all out right now, I don't think as listeners are going to get it, but we will do that. So thank you so much, Catherine. It's been wonderful. It does feel like we're sitting in the living room together, and I love that. And hopefully other people could identify and find in themselves that knowing in whatever way they do that. That still comes back to connection and power for good, for service, which is great. So with that, I thank you. And I thank all of you who are listening and watching in. And I look forward to seeing you next time when we will be able to look at life-giving ways to be and see the world. And in a more practical thing, there are solutions inside of you, inside of all of us, to help us shift to what needs to be life-giving, instead of just accepting what's going on. And so with that, I wish you well in your families and your communities, and I'll see you next time.
Kia ora.